In this video, you will understand why I am very keen and particular about improving access to housing, especially for the middle class that work and live in Nigerian cities, starting especially from Lagos, as well as how we can achieve this by using something I've called income responsive city planning. As extra, you will also understand the mathematics and economics of housing planning from developers' point of view, which, since we will be entering election campaign season very soon, this will give you a better understanding of how to ask better questions from your candidates as it relates to their manifestos on how they hope and plan to make our lives better. So let's start with why I care about housing and why I also believe that we must make housing and property ownership accessible and possible for the middle class. Yes, the asset economy is real, and the more rich people put their money into housing, the harder it gets for the have-nots, for the middle class and for the low class to own housing, and the faster the inequality gap, which is why it is very important that we look into ways to ensure and maintain access to average Nigerians to not only own homes in cities like Lagos, but to also have an opportunity to build wealth for themselves and their coming generation. And one way that I believe we can achieve this without necessarily breaking government budget is by changing the development pattern of housing in our cities. But before explaining what needs to change about it, let's talk about how and what it is currently. So by standard, the minimum land size that the government recognizes is half plot. The effect of this rigidity is that land ownership has become highly prohibitive. Land has become the number one barrier that is keeping people from owning homes or keeping people away from accessing home ownership. And the reason why this matters is while average salary still sits as below 300k per month, the cost of same half plot starts from 10 million upwards. That small innocent standard by itself is the number one reason a lot of people are automatically locked out of housing or home ownership. And this brings me to how we build. But before we name it, let's understand that this is first of all as a direct reaction to this same minimum land size standard. Because people cannot do without housing makes people find alternatives to where their income can afford them. And yes, I know that this feels natural because it's purely survival and economics at play. However, what is really going on is this development pattern that we say we have to change. And this development pattern is what we call urban sprawl. So what is sprawl and what makes it so bad that it has to change, even though it is purely survival and economics at play? So to fully grasp what is going on here, let's start from what we know, which is that number one, land in any Nigerian city is based on a per plot or half plot basis. And that number two, because this city land is more expensive than most city residents can afford, they are forced to look into the peri-urban, that is the outskirts, for affordable alternatives. But interestingly is number three, which is that as more people are going towards the outskirts, the faster economics kick in. The higher demand, the higher the price. And the higher the price of land, the more people go farther away to seek cheaper and more income-friendly alternatives, and which in turn locks the city into this cycle of going further into the outskirts loop, such that the city keeps spreading horizontally outwards. These three realities put together are the reasons for urban sprawl, which is how instead of building housing together within a city, we spread out with individual housings taking large amount of resources in land, in infrastructure, in utilities that could have better served everybody if we had stayed and built within the city. It is in that contrast of how much more resources this sprawled out development consumes versus what we would have used if we had stayed compact that is the side effect of urban sprawl. This is exactly how most of Nigerian or even African cities grew. In fact, the real estate market brands it as the best thing to have ever happened. They called it growth and sold it as the justification for why you should come buy their offerings close to Lekki Airport. Now, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that. However, the true cost of this sprawled growth is that first of all, it is the number one reason why land prices keeps multiplying every day. This city land is limited, but we all keep buying one plot each only to build on only 30 to 40% of the same land. Yet, each plot and each housing requires infrastructure in roads, in electricity, in water, in drainage, and utilities, all of which the government cannot afford to provide. And this is not because the government is wicked or stingy, but rather because it does not make economic sense for the government to embark on such infrastructure development. Remember again that this is purely the economic side of housing. The only thing that ever motivates the government to provide infrastructure is the certainty that it's going to make its revenue. So, with that in mind, and compared against the very low number of people who pay their taxes, then you will understand why this reluctance is so. Meanwhile, because the people cannot keep waiting for the government, they have the option of either adapting, adjusting, or circumventing provision of such infrastructure, or they bear the burden of providing such infrastructure for themselves. And where they circumvent or augment, the situation gets worse. While if they choose to provide it themselves, the cost gets garbaged out to the cost of housing, and which further makes housing unaffordable for people. If you live and work in Lagos, you will understand or relate to why this is for so many estates or so many areas that it looks like government have forsaken them. So that summarizes why the way we develop, which is sprawl, has to change. This is very important because this is how most of us, many of us, have come to understand city growth or city expansion. However, the way this has happened, or which is still happening, has now made it too expensive for our cities continuing to grow like this or manage this same form of city development. Even up till now, I have not made mention of the long hours in traffic or even the high cost of transportation, which is due to this continuous outward spreading of the city. I reckon you would say, oh, Lagos is already overpopulated, or that this is just a direct reflection of Lagos overpopulation. But this same Lagos population expansion, which is the reason why we must change this development pattern, is an advantage for affordable housing. Although I know that this will not sit well with most people, since the goal for most of us is also to buy our own land and build one or two mansions. I totally get it. But at the same time, remember that housing is basically just economics. So the same way population growth offers an economic advantage for tax and IGR, is the same way it also offers an advantage for smarter city planning and an income responsive urban development. Work with me and I will show you how. Let's do small mathematics. So, all over the world, it is agreed that the basic living space requirement for shelter for an average family is the equivalent of 1/6 of a standard plot. That is between 80 to 100 square meter. And we call that floor area ratio, FAR. And most developers' duplexes and terrace duplexes fall within this range. What this suggests is that one 600 square meter plot can give shelter to 6 families, 6 dwelling units, 6 DUs based on 100 square meter FAR, floor area ratio. But as simple and logical as this mathematics sounds, there are 2 constraints. The first is what we call density ratio, which is how government controls the number of dwelling units, DU, that you can have in certain areas based on your FAR, floor area ratio. And the second is setback, which is the space you have between the fence and the front of the building, the 2 sides, and the back of the house. What this does to our economics is that it limits the amount of same land that you can use to build that house. So after we implement density ratio and setback, our 600 square meter can only now take just 3 family units based on our 100 square meter FAR. And this is where building up now comes in. That in order to balance the economics of land price and population growth to control and bring down the cost of housing, we then have to replicate our DU, dwelling units, across multiple floors. But wait, this is already happening, but it's not in any way reducing the cost of housing. So what are we missing? Or what have we done wrong? Number 1, buying land still happens in terms of one plot or half plot. Yes, people are already bypassing this and using less than quarter plot or even 1/5 of a plot. But the point is, the cost of land is still too high, even for developers. And the amount of people that are buying this quarter plot, 1/8, 1/6 of a plot, is not enough to make that much difference on the cost of housing. So why don't we allow buying of land and land ownership to happen in more flexible sizes that people can afford within their income, so that more people can own land at scale? Same land, only now more legal and bankable owners. And two, since when we allow people to own land in more flexible sizes, setbacks also will have to be flexible so that owners can now gain more land to create more floor area. So this would mean that in some cases, we will allow people have zero setback, in some cases half setback, in some cases full setback. I mean, since a lot of people are already doing this, even though planning does not allow it, why don't we take advantage and stay ahead of this to capture the economic rewards and value that it offers? And just by allowing these two changes, something powerful will happen. This is where the mathematics and economics of floor area ratio, dwelling units, and population density plays an important role, which is if before one person struggles to buy 600 square meter for 100 million naira and then builds four dwelling units, each at 50 million naira. The selling price for these houses will be 100 million for land divided by 4 plus the 50 million that costs to build each housing plus profit. This will land us in the range of 80 to 100 million just to be decent. But in this new method where 5 people can buy the same 600 square meter, and if we limit number of dwelling units to just 2 at same 50 million per unit, now I know that this still looks expensive and unaffordable for a lot of people. However, let's pay attention to what is happening behind the numbers. In the first case, we have one developer, 4 units, and total revenue 400 million. But in the second case, we have 5 developers or owner, 10 units, and 600 million total revenue. And the reason this is important is because remember that the main problem that we attributed to this sprawl is that it uses more resources than it can generate revenue for. So when we compare the back end of the two scenarios, this more income responsive development pattern will help the government make more revenue than keeping to this current method of urban sprawl. This way, the government is continually incentivized and encouraged to continue to invest in infrastructure development within the city, and which, at least by so doing, the development cost of housing would continually fall and reduce, and which in turn makes housing development more affordable and more accessible to other people. Now, more people will be able to afford and access prime locations without necessarily going to the city outskirts. That does not jeopardize their ability for better home value in the future, and which also does not cost them their quality of life. So now I hope you've seen how population growth is not only an economic advantage for tax and IGR, but is also an opportunity for us to make housing affordable and accessible to the middle class. And now to the most important part of this conversation, which is to make all of this happen, we must all come together and go to city planning and say, work with us to help us make our lives better and introduce or incorporate these ideas that some cities in Nigeria and other rich countries have implemented to make housing, to make livelihood better and more accessible for their people. Because the reality is we cannot eliminate the sprawl, and building up is not particularly cheap either. And so also is the limitation of gentrification. We cannot just bulldoze people's homes and livelihoods away the same way we did Makoko. For better results, we must combine multiple city planning and urban development strategies. The people and the government, through its city planning and urban development agencies, must all work together. And it is only by doing this that blending multiple city planning strategies can offer better city planning outcomes for the people. And this is the real objective of city planning, that we can achieve balance or fairness at least, such that the people that still want and can afford sprawl can still do so, as long as it does not make the government lose money. While for those who want flexible land sizes too, can also achieve their goals without sacrificing property value for other people within the area. Yes, this will mean firmer systems and stricter regulations. Yet, it is expected, as this will be the price for real transformation in housing. So all of this only underscores the importance of public communication, public education, public engagement, and public enlightenment in city planning and governance. Real meaningful transformation in housing, in how people live, will only come with positive change. And positive change will only come from positive attitudes. And the only way we can form new attitudes and new positive behavior is by constant public engagement, by constant public communication, and by constant public participation in matters that concern how the public lives and fears. I hope this helps.